All right, everyone, welcome back. We are pretty much ready to start phase 2. Phase 1 was the prep on all this, and you guys didn't really need to see that. We sanded everything, we sanded our bodywork. This is all finished in 600. 600 is a perfect grit for our silver sealer, which we're going to put over this entire panel. So the 600 scratch is going to be perfect. It's not going to leave anything behind, and the sealer is going to cover that beautifully. So what I wanted to talk about, take this opportunity to kind of talk about a few little tape techniques and tricks. Because we're doing just a panel repair, I'm not going across the roof and across the back panel and into these door jambs. We're going to try to preserve as much of the OEM, or not OEM, but the paint that's on here, so we're not going to paint this entire jam area. So with doing this with candy, it could be a little difficult because of the color match, essentially, right? And actually, if you really look, this leading edge of this quarter is actually a little bit lighter, so they're a little bit light on the cover, so we're going to try to adjust that and make it look a little bit better. So what I have is some fine line tape. This is FBS, the blue tape. So I did a 1/4 inch and I did 1/8 inch. So I have 1/4 and 1/8. And what I did was actually come in and I started from the inside here. And the reason this is all taped up is because I am going to kind of open and close the door while we're doing this, just to check the color to make sure we're where we need to be, and I just don't want the masking paper coming out and blowing around. So what I'm going to do here, I'll show you guys with this tape. I taped all the way out almost to the leading edge of where this quarter panel has a lip, where there's a little bit of body caulking here, like a seam. And I taped almost to that edge with my 1/4 inch tape. And then I went and overlapped that with a piece of 1/8 inch fine line, where I went right to the edge, right to that reveal where that quarter panel is. And the reasoning behind that is I'm gonna kind of step down my, essentially not a blend, but where I put my material, so I don't build up a thick edge. And especially with spraying candy red with a silver base, if you guys have ever done graphics or anything like that before, and you have a hard tape line and you spray a base color and then colors on top of that, sometimes you run the risk of when you pull that tape, you're going to see like the leading edge of that color, because the silver is so bright, it might kind of poke out from underneath because you're layering, and we don't want to have that happen on this, because what's going to happen is I'm going to have 2 coats of silver, 3 coats of red, and then clear, and when I pull that off, I don't want to see a silver halo. Kind of like almost if you cut too hard with a razor blade, you're going to see that line. I don't want to see a silver edge on this jam area, because you're going to be looking right at it. So what is going to happen when I spray is that first line that goes right to the edge, I'm going to put my silver sealer down and my first coat of my candy red. And then I'll do is I have a little ripcord. I have a little tab on the end. I'll show you guys. I'll do it up here and kind of make it easier for you to understand. I'm going to pull that tape. So that is going to allow my second and third coat of candy to go just beyond that tape line and kind of go right to the edge of that quarter panel. And then the clear is going to go to the edge of that. And when I'm done with the clear, I'm going to pull that tape, and it'll allow that clear coat to kind of round over and soft, give a nice easy transition into that somewhat of a hard line. It's not, I'm not just making my own line. There is a kind of a defined line here, so it's going to make that nice and easy, kind of a hidden kind of a blend, essentially. So what I'll do here is I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about up in the sail panel. All right, so let's just pretend that this is our door jamb, and this is the quarter panel on this side. So my first line is going to go, like if this was that body seam line, it's like right there. So like a 30-second right to that edge. Right? And then I came back and I go over that again with this one, right? And overlap that right to that actual edge. And this is what's giving us the controlled line, this tape right here. So these two, what I did was I just kind of folded it over at the bottom, and I taped it to the rocker panel so it doesn't blow around when I'm spraying. All right, so now I go spray my silver sealer, 2 coats, right? And my first coat of candy red. So this is the quarter panel side. Spray it right to this line. That's fine. And then after that first coat, I pull my little cord, and then I spray my other 2 coats of candy, and then my clear. So now when I'm done spraying my clear, I go back in at the last coat when I'm finished, and I pull this one off. So what you're doing essentially is kind of stepping down, kind of like creating a reverse letdown panel of your material, so you're losing that edge, and you're also making a nice soft transition. And because you're going to cover that leading edge of that silver where you had the silver with red, it's going to make that a lot more invisible and a lot easier to kind of blend into what we have in terms of the existing finish. So I'm going to go ahead and actually do it too. I did the same thing up here on the roof. I have a tape line here. There's a trim panel, but I'm going to pull this off and let that clear coat kind of roll over, and it'll be nice. So just things to keep in mind when you guys are doing something like this, especially like we're not going, again, into the whole jam. We're not spraying the whole car. So we're trying to kind of keep things as seamless as possible. So I'm going to go ahead, get the rest of this back taped and masked, and get it wiped down. And we're going to start spraying sealer, so I'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, everyone, we are back. The booth is running. I got everything wiped down intact, ready to spray. And I'm going to put on first coat of our 6013 Silver Sealer. It's going to be the ground coat. We did a lot of testing. If you guys saw the video, we had a teaser video on this where we were doing the candy, making the candy to match this color. And I tried a bunch of different ground coats, and ended up being our 6013 Silver Sealer. Ended up being the winner. So that's the one we're going to use. That's what I have right here, 10% 4011. I'm actually using a new gun that we got to try from our friends down at Spray Gunner. This is the No Name, the Z gun from No Name, from our friends at Spray Gunner. It's a 1.3 and right around 20 PSI. So I've been using this gun quite a bit and really kind of putting it through its paces, and so far I'm very happy with it. So you guys can check that out. But this is coat number 1. All right, guys, welcome back. Silver Sealer is all dry. We did 2 coats of Silver Sealer over the entire area. Went ahead and actually let that really dry, and I just lightly knocked it down to make sure there's no dust or any kind of edges or any kind of metallic that might have been standing up. And I just gave it one nice, even kind of a drop coat over the top of that. So really 3 coats. Two coats to get it covered, 1 coat to just make it nice and even. Let that dry really well, about an hour with the fan running the whole time. So this is totally dry. We are ready to move on to our candy. So I got my candy mixed up. I opted to actually go in the teaser video when we talked about mixing the color. I said I was going to go 6-to-1, and that's what I did for my spray outs, but I actually opted to go 8-to-1, just a little bit less concentrated because we're spraying a big, broad area. I just want to make sure that I have a little bit more room if I have to. I'd rather put another coat on, make it nice and even, than actually start too dark, and now you're pretty much screwed at that point. You cannot reverse the candy. The candy's just going to keep getting darker. And also, we talked about real quick, we talked about me blending around the back corner. We looked at it, really looking for what that back panel section is where the taillights are. It's just a little filler panel that goes underneath or right above the bumper and underneath the trunk lid. It made no sense to leave that and run the risk of having it two-tone in case the color is a little bit different or that blend. Again, blending a candy is really not easy to do. So for this, because we're doing both quarters, I figured I'd just wrap it right around. It's going to be a lot cleaner, no tape edges, no lines, no differences in the candies and all that. So it just alleviates that problem. If you can avoid a problem like that, go for it. So for us, for the time it took to just scuff that back panel, sand it down, it actually kind of looked rough anyway, so we straightened it out a little bit. Looks that much better. So we are ready to go and start spraying candy. So this is it. I'm using my Supernova. It's a 1.2, it's an Evo gun, 1.2 tip. No reducer in this because I went 8-to-1. It's still skinny enough, and I mean skinny is thin enough to pass through and not have problems. It's not going to be slow. So my 1.2 and my Evo, 29 PSI, and we're going to probably do 3 to 4 coats. So we'll do 2 coats and do the third, and then we'll kind of look at the door. I'll untape the door and close it, see what that looks like, and then we'll go from there to see where we are in terms of color. So this is coat number 1. 75% overlap too, real quick, 75%. So that means every time I make a pass, I'm only having 25% of a new pattern going on. So that's a pretty good overlap. So that's about it. We're gonna start spraying candy. All right, welcome back, guys. Coat number 1 is totally dry, and again, I touched on that. It's very, very key to have these completely dry between coats. You want it totally dry. So if you wait a little bit longer, it's only going to be more beneficial. So we don't want to do a wet on wet, or even just a medium wet, or it's just going to cause problems. So make sure it's totally dry. We got really good air movement in here. We waited about 15 minutes for this first coat to flash. So we are ready to do coat number 2. All right, everyone, welcome back. This is the last step of this part of this project, and that is the application of the clear coat. So we gave this ample time to dry. We did 3 coats of the candy. We let it dry for about 4 hours before we came in towards the end of the day, and now we're going to clear. So we are ready to spray clear, and I'm probably going to do 2 to 3 coats, depending on how it looks. If it looks good at 2, we'll leave it at 2, but we might end up doing a 3rd just because the rest of this car is reasonably smooth and flat in terms of orange peel, so we want enough material to really deck it down. But this is it, ready to go. I pulled off my tape on the inside of the jam like I was talking about, so I'm ready to have that last edge where I'm going to just peel that off after I do my last application of clear. It's all tacked down and ready to spray, so this is coat number 1. All right, everyone, welcome back. This is the beginning of the last portion of this segment on this refinish, and that is going to be to paint the hood and the engine lid in the back. I opted to paint these off the car because we're only trying to match the hood to the existing color on the fenders and the cowl, so there's really no reason for me to leave it on the car. It's a little bit easier to get around it off the car. And it's a slightly different color than what we did on the doors. It's actually just a touch lighter. So I'm just going to be doing the same thing, the same process, and just really cognizant of the value of the color that we're trying to match on the cowl and the fenders. So to start that, we obviously have to put our silver sealer down. So again, this is my silver sealer. I'm mixed up, ready to spray. This hood was sanded down with 400 DA. And just tacked it off, wiped it down, back taped everything. We are ready to spray. I just want to touch on one thing real quick too. It looks like I have bare metal all over this hood. That is actually a primer that's underneath this black. They painted this black just because they wanted a black hood on the car. So that's not bare metal. Anytime we do go over bare metal, especially like this type of application, we always recommend a self-etch primer or a DTM primer that you can let dry and kind of give it a light scub. So even just something out of an aerosol, a 1K product just to hit edges of bare metal is what we recommend. Our sealer will stick exceptionally well, but the problem is you sometimes lose that corrosion protection. There are no corrosion inhibitors in the Autoborn sealer. It will stick extremely well, but it's just a safe, cheap insurance essentially, just to put a little bit of self-etch primer on. So anyways, we got this all tacked off and ready to spray. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like to put down the Autoborn sealer. All right, guys, we are back. Coat number 1 is dry. I'm going to put on my second coat, and if you notice during that first coat, I was a little slow in my application. I kind of put it on like a medium coat. I was not trying to really over wet this. I'm concerned with coverage at this point. And the reason I put my first coat on a little hesitant, I guess you could call it, is if there's anything on the surface that's going to react or cause any kind of issues, you're going to see that right away in the sealer, and it's a lot easier to let that dry and sand out a medium coat than a real heavy wetted coat. It's going to take longer to dry, and they're going to work harder to kind of sand out any kind of imperfections. I have seen things before, again, because we didn't prime this hood. I don't know what's on it for material, so I was just making sure that we weren't going to have any kind of a funky reaction. So that was my reasoning behind that. You'll see my second coat, I'm going to put it on a little bit heavier. Still about a 50% overlap, nice and even, edge to edge, and you can see, again, it looked a little streaky, but as it dries, it really does even out nice. At this point, like I said, I'm not trying to get rid of any kind of a funky modeling look. I'm just trying to get nice, even coverage, and I'll come and show you guys on the last coat how we make it nice and even in terms of the metallic appearance. So this is coat number 2. All right, everyone, welcome back. It has been about an hour. Our sealer is totally locked up, nice and dry, perfect surface for me to put our candy on top of. So again, we let this dry for about an hour, which is ideal. We got really good air movement in here, so that's perfect. If you're not in a booth, wait a little bit longer, but you want it to be totally dry to the touch. There's no benefit in putting candy or any other paint over the top of it too soon. So my candy is mixed the exact same way we did in the car, same exact gun, same exact application. I'm 29 PSI, I'm going to do a 75% overlap, nice and easy and consistent, and I'm going to make sure that I go a little beyond the edges of my panels. I don't want to try to stop short and kind of have funky spray edge at the edge of each panel. I just want to go right off the panel, right off the panel. It's better to have a little bit overspray or whatever in the air instead of trying to stop it right at the edge of your panel. So this is coat number 1. Okay, welcome back. Coat number 1 is dry. This is coat number 2. Everyone, welcome back. This pretty much wraps up this project for now. I just want to kind of quickly touch on a few things. We got some fresh clear on the 2 panels behind me while we were away. I went ahead, I did 3 coats of EC 550, PPG EC 550, and that is, if you guys are familiar with any of the other videos that we've done, this is my go-to clear when we're using a 2K top coat. So that was my clear, 3 coats. One thing I also want to talk about on that particular application, we always recommend a slowest possible hardener and reducer. It's better to use a slower product over water-based paint. And I've always, even when I'm painting with solvent, when I used to paint with solvent, I always preferred going one step above what the temperatures were in the conditions that I'm spraying. I always liked a slower product. It's going to give you better holdout, better gloss, better final product in terms of the shine and that crispness. And it's just going to give you better results. Anytime you're using fast or those speed clears or something that works really, really quick, I always see that there's always an inherent dieback or pinch. It kind of, when we say that, it means it kind of gets a little more texture even after you're done spraying, and it gets a little bit of cloudiness too. It's not really clear. So it's anytime, even whatever product you're using, even over solvent-based paints, I always see that. So stay away from the speed clears. You're going to have a better result with something a little bit slower. So real quick too, I want to talk about, we're going to give a quick wrap up of the products that we use. So we ended up figuring out that our silver sealer, our 6013 silver sealer, was the best candidate to match this color for that ground coat. So we did silver sealer, and then we went ahead and mixed our candy blood red with a 5% add of sunset magenta, just to wash out a little bit of that orange kind of tint. Typically that would go away when you're applying more of the blood red, but because we're trying to match a color, I kind of had to be within a certain amount of coats, but I still needed to get that color a little less orange. So we ended up mixing that with our 4050. This is our go-to carrier for our Candy 2.0 system. This is what we recommend. 6:1 is usually my standard recommendation, and actually what I ended up doing was when we broke off from the hood and the trunk, I did 2 coats, and I saw a little bit of modeling, and I wasn't sure if it was from the silver sealer or if it was from my candy. So I actually went back on the bench and I extended that color a little bit more. I actually ended up going 10 parts 4050 to 1 part Candy 2.0. So same exact ratio in terms of the mixture, but I thinned it down a little bit. And when I say thin it down, I didn't add reducer. I actually added more of the 4050 to kind of extend that color, to decrease the concentration. So it's a little bit more forgiving in order for me to get rid of a little bit of that fuzziness that was going on that I was seeing. So I was able to add a couple more coats to help kind of wash that out without really drastically changing that color. Where I wanted to do 3 coats and have it covered, I was already at 2. I was able to actually do almost 3 more coats, still get the same color, but I was able to lose that fuzziness. And it's not going to work all the time. If you really have a lot of stripes going on, they're going to be there. That's why it's really critical to do that 75% overlap and be really methodical with how you spray. And also too, this was my test panel. So we always talk about doing a test panel and spraying and making sure and checking. This was a perfect version of that. I actually had this pre-clear. So this was done exactly what I wanted my color to look like when I sprayed the quarter panels. I sprayed a panel at the same time, and I had this without clear coat on it. So it was easy for me to match and hold up to my trunk lid and hold up to my hood and see, okay, is this the color? Is this where it is? It's a very simple and extremely effective way, other than clearing it and getting all done, then putting it on the car and going, oh man, it doesn't match. So we're always talking about test panels. This is a great use of a test panel just in your color match. So we're going to actually go ahead and do the headlight doors as well, because they didn't really match from the beginning. And again, that wasn't our paint, so we're going to actually just kind of give that to them so everything matches in the front. So I'm going to use this exact panel to do that same thing in terms of making sure my color is correct. So that wraps it up for us right now. When we get the car all sanded and buffed and assembled, we'll do a quick walk around outside. You guys can see what that looks like and see what the finished product looks like. So until then, I'll see you guys in a minute. All right, guys, this is it. Sanded and buffed and all reassembled. Basically, everything that we had to do is completely done, and we're just going to get ready to ship this car back to the owner. So you guys can see the headlight doors, the fillers into the hood. The color matches extremely well. We're really happy with how well it turned out. Just a little bit of tinting and shading in terms of getting that color just right goes a long way in terms of making sure that final product is exactly what we want. So you can see the color of the quarter to the door, and of course the quarter to the trunk is no problem because we painted both the trunk and the quarter panels. But I'm really happy with the color match on this car and really happy with the finished product. Just kind of goes to show you exactly what you can do in terms of taking your time and being methodical with your approach and tinting the candy to really match something. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it takes a really dialed in approach in order to get everything all squared away. So this is another episode of Color Mixing with Chris here at Createx Colors. I'm Chris Arpin. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.